أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Lesson number 63, ayah number 114. لا خير في كثير من نجواهم. There is no good in much of their private conversations. In the previous ayat, we learnt about the incident of Tu'ma and how he had committed theft and he had accused a Jewish man of having committed that theft. And how he and his people, because of their eloquence, because of the way that they presented their case, they almost convinced the Prophet ﷺ to make a decision against the Jew and in their favor. And that story, because of that, many lessons were taught. For instance, what were some of the lessons that we learned from the ayat that we have read so far? That instead of just believing everything that a person says, investigate, research. But in particular, what do we learn from the ayat? From the ayat that were revealed. That a person may be able to cheat himself, a person may be able to cheat other people, he may be able to deceive other people, but he cannot deceive Allah. You can commit a sin, cheat others, lie to them, hide their reality from them, but can a person hide from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? No, he cannot. Every single thing is being recorded and Allah is watching, and at the end of the day, Allah is the one who's going to give us recompense for every action that we do. What else do we learn? The importance of accepting your mistakes. And the fact is that if initially we accept our mistake, then it's much better, it's much easier, instead of delaying and deferring. Because the more we delay, the more lies we have to come up with, the more excuses we have to come up with, and it leads to more sins. One small sin leads to many more sins. Now, when this incident happened, just imagine if somebody does something wrong and he's accusing someone. Now, with his friends, he is going to be discussing things. And there are also going to be a lot of private conversations, secret talks. So, over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that in most of their private conversations, there is absolutely no good at all. لا خير, there is no good في كثير من نجواهم. There is no good in most of their whisperings. Why? Why? Because if you think of it, secret talks, private conversations, what do we talk about typically? It's backbiting. It's something that the other person would not like. So, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم. And the word najwa has been said over here. The word najwa is from the root letters noon, jim, waw. And najwa is derived from the word najwatun. And najwa is a high place. What is it? A high place. A place that is distinct from its surrounding areas. Why? Because it's very high. So similarly, when you choose someone to have a private conversation with, what are you doing? You're selecting them above others. Like for example, if there's a group of people sitting together and you decide that you're going to whisper into your friend's ear only, then what is it? You're preferring her over everybody else. You're going to tell her something that you're not telling everybody else. And also if you think of it, people who were doing najwa, generally what do they think? That they cannot be seen. They cannot be seen. Nobody noticed them. Like for example, if we're sending a text message during class, or we're talking to our friend, or we're nudging, we think that nobody can see us. But the fact is that a lot of people can see you. So the person who is doing najwa, he thinks that he's hidden. In fact, he is at a high place. He becomes distinct. And he becomes visible. So a person thinks that he's deceiving others, but he's not actually deceiving others. So najwa is to have a private conversation with someone, a secret talk with someone, confidential, to confide a secret. So over here Allah says, لا خير في كثير من نجواهم. Most of their najwa are void of any good. Most of their najwa are void of any good. They're devoid of khair. Why? Because generally in najwa, what do people talk about? Something bad about others. Something bad about others. Or it's about lying, or it's about fabricating things. It's about coming up with false excuses. coming up with a false story to hide one's crime. So most of their najwa are void of khair. Illa except, meaning except for the najwa of who? Man amara bi sadaqatin, of the one who commanded with sadaqah. Meaning the one who in najwa, in a private conversation, what is he doing? He's commanding his friend, he's ordering his friend to give sadaqah. Why is he commanding his friend to give sadaqah in private? Why not in public? Why is he telling him secretly, give sadaqah here? Why? What's the reason? What do you think? Because it protects the honor of who? The recipient of the sadaqah. Because if publicly you say, oh, why don't you give sadaqah to so-and-so person? If you say it publicly, what's going to happen? The poverty of the poor person is going to be revealed, and he is going to be humiliated before people. Or ma'rufin, something good. Meaning, or the najwa of the one who commands ma'ruf in a private conversation. What is ma'ruf? Ma'ruf is everything that is approved by the Sharia. Everything that is approved by the Sharia. So it applies to the obligations, the fara'id. So for example, telling someone to pray salah. Telling someone to do something good, to speak the truth. Correcting someone's mistake. Because amr bil ma'ruf is what? That somebody is doing something wrong, or somebody is not doing something good, and you tell them to do that which is good. So it includes ordering someone to do right, and it also includes correcting someone's mistake. Now why should this be done in a najwa? Why? Because if you correct someone's mistake publicly, they might feel humiliated before people. Because sometimes really, people don't realize what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing is wrong. So if they're humiliated in public, if they're corrected in public, it's going to be an insult for them. So, أو معروف أو إصلاح بين الناس, or reconciliation between people. Meaning, or the najwa of the one who does islah between people. What does it mean by this, islah بين الناس? Many times people, they end up in arguments. They end up having fights with one another, and they stop talking to one another. Relatives, friends, small argument, and that's it. I'm not talking to you, and you don't talk to me. So, if a person privately, secretly goes to someone, and he says, why don't you forgive the other? It's okay, no big deal. Just go talk to them. So this is a najwa. It's a private conversation. But he's doing this private conversation, why? In order to reconcile between people. So this is something that is good. And notice the word an-nas has been used over here. An-nas has been used over here. So all people, whether they're your relatives, or they're just your friends, or just someone whom you are aware of. Islahin bayn an-nas, because this is something that is very virtuous. وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ, and whoever does that, does what? What? Najwa, for the purpose of amr bi sadaqah, or ma'ruf, or islahin bayn an-nas. Whoever does that, why? إِبْتِغَاءَ مَرْضَاتِ اللَّهِ, in order to seek the pleasure of Allah, the approval of Allah. Nothing of the worldly benefits, but rather he is doing this sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَسَوْفَ نُؤْتِيهِ, then soon we shall give him أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا, a great reward. So what do we learn from this ayah? First of all, we learn that most private conversations are void of any good. If we look at the most private and secret conversations that we have with our friends, with our family members, in which we are whispering, in which we close the door, and we make sure nobody's listening. We speak in a whisper, in a hush. We look around. We make sure that the other person is not listening. What are we generally talking about? Think about the last time that you had a private conversation with someone in which you were whispering, in which you made sure that the door was closed and nobody was listening to you, or you were whispering on the phone. Think about it. What was it that we were talking about? What was it that the other person was saying? Many times, this includes ghibah, backbiting. And what is backbiting? ذِكْرُكَ أَخَاكَ بِمَا يَكْرَهُ, to mention your brother in a way that he would dislike. To mention something about your brother that he would dislike being discussed, being spoken of. So, if for example, you are telling somebody about how, I don't like the way my mother-in-law cooks food. I don't like the way she cooks food. I don't like the gift that she brought for me. We think this is not ghibah. This is a fact. But if you say this to your mother-in-law, is she going to like it? Is she going to like it? No. She said this to me today. Would you say it on their face? No. Would they like it? No. So what is it? It's ghibah. And if we think of it, most of our private conversations, this is what they revolve around. We make sure that the doors are closed, nobody's listening. Similarly, when we're texting, when we are having, an online chat conversation with someone, what are they about? Most of the times, what are they about? There is no khair. And no khair doesn't mean that it's sinful necessarily, but no khair, it's lagh. It's useless. There is no benefit. No benefit of dunya, no benefit of deen, no benefit of akhirah. Really, if you think about it, sometimes in our conversations, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? How the food was, what you did, where you went, what she said, what they said. And at the end of the day, 2 hours you spent talking. Summarize that and see what good was there in it for you. For your deen, for your dunya, for your akhirah. No benefit whatsoever. So this is why we learn that whisperings, generally, they are disliked in our deen. Najwa is something that is disliked in our deen. Why? Because a person should be open and clear, and he should not hide something. If something should be hidden from someone, then it's not worth mentioning. It's not worth talking about. If you won't say to your mother-in-law that I don't like the food that you cooked, then it's not worth mentioning to your friend that you don't like your mother-in-law's food. It's not worth mentioning. It's not worth talking about. So a person should be open and clear. He should not hide things. And whispering in general, what does it create? Bad thoughts, bad suppositions. If 2 people are whispering, what do you think? They must be talking about me. See? They're always doing this. They don't like me. They're always talking against me. So this is why we learn that whisperings, generally, they are disliked in our deen. Because they lead to fasad. They lead to sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا تَنَاجَيْتُمْ فَلَا تَتَنَاجَوْا بِالْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. O you who have believed, when you converse privately, then do not converse about sin and aggression. وَمَعْصِيَةِ الرَّسُولِ, and disobedience to the messenger. So then what should you discuss in private? Because everybody loves to have private conversations. People love to go online and chat and send text messages to others. وَتَنَاجَوْا بِالْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى, but converse about righteousness and piety. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي إِلَيْهِ تُحْشَرُونَ, and fear Allah to whom you will be gathered. In Surah Al-Mujadila, ayah 9 and 10, this was a reference. The ayah continues. The next ayah is that إِنَّمَا النَّجْوَى مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ, private conversation is only from shaitan. Meaning he is the one who inspires it to people. Why? لِيَحْزُنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, so that he may grieve those people who have believed. That the believers think that they're talking about us, and they feel bad. وَلَيْسَ بِضَارِّهِمْ شَيْئًا, but he will not harm them at all. إِلَّا بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ, except by the permission of Allah. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, and upon Allah should the believers rely. So if 2 people are really having a private conversation, don't just assume that they're talking about you. Trust upon Allah. We also learn from this ayah that a person, he may advise someone secretly. He may enjoin sadaqah to someone in private. Why? In order to conceal the poverty and the need of the other person. We learned earlier in Surah Al-Baqarah that وَإِن تُخْفُوهَا وَتُوهَا الْفُقَرَاءَ فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, that if you conceal the sadaqah and if you give the sadaqah to the poor in that way, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, then it's better for you. We also learned that if a person, he advises another of something good in privacy, it is better. Advising someone in privacy is much better. Why? Because telling them in public might be insulting. Telling them in public might be insulting. So for instance, if you go somewhere and your child is misbehaving, what are you going to do? Start yelling at him in public? Why are you doing this? And you're always doing this. And I've told you so many times. And just sit here and don't move. Is this what you should do? If you do that, what is that going to lead to? The child is going to answer back eventually. He's not going to respect you. You don't respect him, he's not going to respect you. So in this case, what's the best thing? Leave that place, take your child with you, go to the car, sit him down, and then explain. And if you start insulting him in public, they're never going to like it. And it's not just with children, even with older people. Even with older people, nobody likes to be corrected in public. Sometimes, if it is necessary, because it's urgent, then a person may do so appropriately. Like, for example, in the classroom. If somebody is doing something that is completely unacceptable and they're disturbing everybody else. So it is okay for the teacher to correct them. Why? Because at that time I cannot say, can you please come to me, and then whisper in their ear. It's not appropriate. But if it's urgent, and if it's extremely important, and through that other people need to be taught as well, then that is correct. It is appropriate. But generally, it is good to advise someone to do amr bil ma'roof in private. We also learn that a person may advise for islah in private, because if he does so openly, it may lead up to arguments which may worsen the situation. So for example, two people, they had an argument. Now you're trying to fix things between them. Both of them are sitting, they're not talking to one another. Now you go and you start saying, oh, why are you so upset? Okay, what did she say? And what did you say? And now both of them, instead of listening to you, it's going to spark another argument. What's the safest thing to do? Talk to them in private, on one-on-one basis first. And then discuss the situation later on. But you can't go and discuss every time. It's better to go private. The Prophet ﷺ said, should I not tell you something which is better than fasting, the salah, and better than giving in charity? And obviously this fasting, this salah, and this sadaqah is voluntary. And the people asked, of course. And he said, to reconcile between people. To reconcile between people. That is much better than voluntary fasting, voluntary salah, and voluntary sadaqah. Islahu dhatil bayn, bringing reconciliation between people. We also learn from this ayah about the importance of ikhlas. Where do we learn that from? Ibtigha'a mardatillah. That a person may be doing the best of actions, the most important of actions, but if his niyyah is incorrect, then that action is worthless. He may be doing the greatest of deeds, but without ikhlas, they are worthless. Now, why is ikhlas needed for, najwa, for good najwa? Why is ikhlas needed for good najwa? If you think of it, what's the relationship? Like, for example, you're talking to someone in private, telling them to forgive the other person for the purpose of islah. Why is ikhlas necessary? Because in this situation, you can think, oh, I'm so good. I'm trying to do islah between people. A person can easily do riya. And if you think of it, this is a private conversation. And even in a private conversation, a person can do riya. Just before one person. Just before one person. And it can destroy his action. So this shows to us how important ikhlas is. That even in the most hidden actions, we have to make sure that our niyyah is sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.